Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's start the discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 7 most important articles for a detailed and comprehensive coverage so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. But before we start, I have a couple of announcements. See, today, the 11th of April, is very critical as far as global geopolitics is concerned. Because today, Pakistan is all set to host the peace talks between US and Iran, also dubbed as the Islamabad talks. I had promised that I'll bring out a separate video on this, and this video was already uploaded a couple of days ago on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't watched it yet, please ensure you watch it right away, right after this session. The link for this video is provided in the description box below so that you're completely aware of Pakistan's role as a mediator in the US-Iran conflict. Once the peace talks conclude, depending on the outcomes, I will make another video and a set of shorts so that you can have a complete grasp of this critical development. The other big announcement is that today Unacademy is all set to conduct India's biggest civil services championship test, the UCSC. The test begins at 11 a.m. in just another few minutes. And you also have another slot. If you can't take it up at 11 a.m., you can attend at 5 p.m. This test will give you a chance to attend 50 MCQ questions. And the top performers will stand a chance to win attractive rewards, gift vouchers, and scholarships. Especially the top 32 performers will be chosen for an all India national level quiz conducted by Unacademy. You'll be divided into 16 teams, and your entire travel and accommodation cost is on us. And the winning team stands a chance to win a cash prize of 5 lakh rupees. The runner-up team stands to win a cash prize of 2 lakh rupees, with team 3 and 4 winning 50,000 rupees each. So those interested, please make use of this opportunity immediately. Enroll now by using the link provided in the description below and attempt the test at 11 a.m. or at 5 p.m. today. So with this, let's get started with the analysis of the Hindu newspaper and look at the first article. On page number 6, the Hindu has published a very detailed and insightful article on the recent voter turnout in the state elections that were conducted over the past few days. Several states and union territories went into elections, particularly Assam, Kerala, and the union territory of Puducherry. And we have the elections coming up for the state of West Bengal, as well as Tamil Nadu. So in this context, understanding the importance of voter turnout, voter enthusiasm is very, very important. Now, when you look at the voter turnout, according to data provided by the Election Commission of India, the turnout numbers were spectacular in the recently held elections for Assam, Kerala, and Puducherry. Just look at the numbers. It is quite phenomenal. The voter turnout in Assam was close to 86%. In Puducherry, it was 89% initially, which was later revised to 91%. And Kerala recorded a voter turnout of 78%. Now, these numbers are phenomenal. It is much, much higher than the usual average that we see. If you take the previous Lok Sabha elections, for example, or the previous assembly elections in these states and union territories, the numbers have been pretty low, but you see a sudden and a big jump reaching record levels. So what does this indicate? How come voter turnout has increased? What does it mean for a democracy? See, first, let's talk about these specific elections as to why the voter turnout might have increased. Then after that, we'll have a general discussion on voter participation and why it is critical in a democracy to strengthen democratic institutions and democratic culture. So when you look at Assam, Kerala, etc., recently the SIR exercise which was carried out, the Special Intensive Revision, through which the electoral rolls were revised and updated, by the Election Commission of India in line with its constitutional mandate. The Constitution mandates the Election Commission of India, constitutional body, to constantly update the electoral rolls, ensure that legitimate voters are registered, and maintain the sanctity of the voters list. So, the Election Commission has been carrying out the SIR exercise across multiple states in order to purify the electoral rolls, to remove the voters who might have moved from the constituency, primarily for work, or who would have migrated out of that constituency or state. And you also need to remove the names of deceased voters or absentee voters who have not been casting vote from many years. So this exercise has encountered a lot of controversy as well. The manner in which it has been done, the kind of rush which was seen, where lakhs and crores of voters have been left out. For example, recently the SIR exercise in Uttar Pradesh has dropped around 2 crore voters from the list. And the same has been seen in Bihar, in West Bengal, in Kerala, in Assam as well. So this filtration process could also be directly responsible for the better voter turnout. Because when you remove the voters who are no longer active, any fraudulent entries, deceased voters, voters who have moved and shifted out, absentee voters, when those names are removed and the rest of the legitimate voters, if they show a greater excitement to participate, definitely the numbers are going to improve. And also, the SIR exercise has created an environment of fear. Many voters fear being removed from the voters list. That might have also pushed the voters to cast their vote, to come out and exercise their democratic franchise. So, this is where the editorial believes that the Election Commission has every right to carry out the SIR exercise, to clear out the electoral rolls, maintain them, update them, sanctify them. But at the same time, those who are left out, those who might have been excluded due to the lack of documentation, they deserve every chance to appeal against it and ensure that their names are included in the voters list. Right now, the Election Commission has set up several appellate bodies which are hearing these appeals. But the restrictive manner in which it has been done and the rushed manner in which the SIR exercise was carried out has attracted a lot of criticism. It has raised serious concerns about the exclusion of legitimate voters and the deliberate alteration of the electoral rolls, which possibly might happen at some local booth levels, which could be designed to benefit certain candidates or certain parties, has raised concerns. But the Election Commission has held its ground, stating that the process would be as clean and transparent as possible. So definitely the updation of the electoral rolls has played a big role, and also the kind of fear-based environment which got created because many voters started panicking that if they don't get themselves listed on the voters list, they will lose the democratic right to exercise their franchise. And that might have also led to more enthusiasm amongst the voters to step out and cast their vote, leading to a major and significant jump in the voter turnout. Now, let's talk about the importance of voter participation and enthusiasm. What do turnout numbers indicate? In general, what does it mean for the health of a democracy? This could be a potential mains question. Since record voter turnout is being registered in these elections, there can be a possible mains question on how voter enthusiasm is seen as a sign, a reflection of the health of the democracy. See, when there is a high voter turnout, it definitely means that the people have greater faith in the democratic setup. They have faith in the elections, they have faith in the institutions, they have faith in the government that they are going to elect. Any government which gets elected with great voter turnout and gets a complete majority will enjoy the complete legitimacy of the electorate. It enhances the legitimacy of that elected government if it is elected on the back of a very large voter turnout. It shows that the public has placed their faith in this government, in this party, in this leadership, and this will make them accountable as well. So this is indeed a true representative sign of popular will. Any government which represents popular will end up performing better on the ground because they are held accountable. They are answerable to those voters who stepped out and cast votes in large numbers to bring this party and leadership to power. And this is the very essence of a functioning and thriving democracy. This strengthens the spirit of free and fair elections. When there is greater voter turnout, it reduces the chances of electoral manipulation, manipulating the voters with money, with threats, intimidation, with populist schemes. These practices will automatically go down when voter turnout increases, because this will put the political parties on the cautious note. They will realize that they can't get away with announcing populist schemes or by bribing the voters. They can't do that anymore. They would expect groundwork to be done. They would expect such governments to deliver on the ground with improvements in governance, in public services, in administration. So that is why increased voter enthusiasm strengthens the social contract that exists between the state and its citizenry in a democratic setup. At the end of the day, a democratic state is nothing but a social contract, a contract weaved through the constitution, holding the state with the citizenry together. So, if the citizenry is showing greater faith in the elections, stepping out on voting day to cast votes in large numbers, electing a majority government to power, that is the very essence of a democratic state which is functioning very well and thriving. So, these are the key arguments you can present in a answer which is related to voter turnout and voter enthusiasm. Even the election commission deserves credit because it has spread greater awareness. Increased voter turnout is also a result of improving public awareness about the importance of casting their vote. The election commission conducts an awareness campaign called sweep, systematic voter education and electoral participation. It's one of the main initiatives of the election commission of India to promote electoral awareness, to drive voter turnout. And when voter turnout increases, the chances are very high that marginalized voters are also casting their vote. This provides for greater inclusivity in a democracy. If voter turnout is 80% and above, if it's in the range of 85-90% as we have seen in recent elections, it clearly means that marginalized sections such as SCs and STs, women, other backward classes, the poor people, they are stepping out in large numbers and casting their vote. And that provides for inclusivity in governance. Because those governments which come to power with the votes of all these marginalized sections, they will be forced to deliver on their commitments made in their electoral manifesto. All the socio-economic welfare schemes and programs they have promised, based on which the voters have elected the party to power, they will be compelled to deliver on them. Could be education related schemes, healthcare, infrastructure, employment. So this will directly benefit the marginalized and weaker sections, the vulnerable sections, as these governments will have to focus on socio-economic welfare. They are answerable to these voters when the next elections come up. And that will bring a system of checks and balances. It will bring in more transparency in governance. It can help tackle corruption. So it has a cascading effect, a very positive cascading effect on the system. When more and more voters step out and cast their vote, this is the positive impact that is seen. It shows that the citizens are exercising their civic responsibility and now they expect the political class to deliver on their responsibility. That is a direct correlation that exists. So, engaging the electorate, making them more self aware, keeping them informed is very, very critical to ensure the success of democratic elections. So, this has to be the key takeaway from this particular topic. I hope everybody has clearly understood this. Now, based on what we have discussed, please take up this mains practice question for your answer writing practice. Since this is a slightly easier topic, I'm really hoping all of you take up the question seriously, write your answers and post them in the comments below. I've been noticing that many students who used to post answers regularly, they've stopped doing it. Don't break the consistency, especially those who are preparing for 2027. If you're giving prelims this year, then it's fine. That's a different game altogether. Then you don't have to focus on answer writing now. But if you're preparing for 2027 and beyond, please continue your answer writing practice. Now let's look at the next article. On page 6, there is a column that examines the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan bill that was tabled in the parliament back in December 2025. This bill seeks to completely reform the higher education landscape in India. The regulation of higher education institutions is proposed to be completely reformed through this particular legislation that the central government is pushing through the parliament. But this bill has attracted a lot of controversy and criticism. As a result, the bill, which was introduced in the Lok Sabha in December 2025, it has now been pushed to a JPC, a Joint Parliamentary Committee, for thorough review and examination of the bill. And the JPC has invited feedback from all the stakeholders, from teachers, professors, students, from the civil society, from the universities themselves. Feedback is now being collected by the Joint Parliamentary Committee in order to suggest amendments to this bill proposed by the government. So let's take a detailed look at this particular bill. Given the importance of the bill for higher education sector, we should go a little deep into the topic, go beyond the article as well. Because see, the article, I believe, is largely one-sided. It only takes a negative view of the bill. See, I understand there are a lot of concerning provisions in the bill, which is absolutely right. So criticism on valid grounds, constructive criticism is always welcome. But the article tries to promote just one narrative. So let's balance it out, because a one-sided narrative is not helpful for us in the exams. As aspiring civil servants, civil services aspirants, you need to be as neutral and unbiased as possible and look at things critically. So let's look at the view of the government as well. What the government is claiming that the bill will do. The Ministry of Education, which has pushed the bill. Let's look at the view of the Ministry of Education, and we will examine the critical view of the writer, of the author of this column as well, so that there is some balance to this discussion. Now, this bill is primarily designed to provide for the implementation of the National Education Policy of 2020. The NEP, it had a lot of recommendations for higher education institutions in the country. So some of the recommendations, the policy recommendations of National Education Policy, they are being provided with a statutory backing through this legislation. This proposed law provides the statutory backing for the provisions of NEP with regard to higher education in our country. The main purpose of the bill is to essentially replace some of the existing regulatory bodies in higher education and streamline higher education regulation in the country. But first, let's understand the core concepts that are involved here. When it comes to the domain of education, it essentially is a center and state related issue. Constitutionally speaking, as per the Constitution of India, if you look at the 7th schedule that divides the subjects into union, state list, and concurrent list, education as a subject is clearly under the concurrent list, meaning it is a shared responsibility of central government with the state governments. When you look at entry number 33 of the union list, entry number, 66 of the union list, when you look at the specific entry within the union list, the union government does enjoy a certain degree of power with regard to higher education. But this is largely limited and restricted. When it comes to regulating higher education institutions in the country, central government doesn't have the sole jurisdiction and responsibility. Even state governments have a shared responsibility here. Since education is on the concurrent list, Both union and states have to share the responsibility to regulate the education sector, and that applies for higher education as well. But as per entry 66 of union list, the center does have some powers, but they are limited powers just to achieve coordination when it comes to higher education between states, to ensure common standards are followed, a standard curriculum is followed, and to achieve better coordination between different states. The center has some limited powers under the union list, but other than that, any other regulation of education and higher education should be treated as a shared responsibility of center and state, as education is under the concurrent list. But this bill seeks to do the opposite. The education ministry is almost usurping the authority to allocate funds to government funded higher education institutions. Now, under the current setup, we have the UGC, the University Grants Commission, that would take care of funding for higher education institutions, the public funded higher education institutions, including your IITs, IIMs, etc. But with this new bill, if it becomes a law, the education ministry will completely take over this authority, and it will become the sole authority to set standards and to regulate higher education in the country, which directly counters the jurisdiction and the responsibility of the state governments. It is almost neglecting and sidelining the role of the states and centralizing education related regulation and governance in the hands of the central government alone. And that is a matter of serious concern. Now, when you look at the provisions of the bill, as I told you, it seeks to replace the existing regulatory framework. It replaces the University Grants Commission, the AICTE, which regulates engineering education in the country, National Council for Teacher Education. These three existing regulatory bodies in the field of higher education, they will no longer exist if the bill passes. They will all be replaced with a new centralized regulatory framework which is entirely controlled by the central government. Is that clear? It exempts only medical education and legal education as they are covered under separate respective laws. Except for legal medical education, every other domain of higher education will fall under the ambit of the bill, and it replaces the UGC, the AICTE, and the NCTE. It proposes to establish an apex regulatory body for higher education in India. A top apex regulator would be set up, known as Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan, or the Commission, the Higher Education Commission, essentially. There has been a controversy about the naming of the bill and the names used within the bill as well. As you can see, it's entirely in Hindi. This is seen with other bills as well. Many non Hindi speaking states have often complained about this, raised issues about this in the parliament, but still the central government pushes through this using just Hindi based names, which could probably go against the spirit of the linguistic diversity of India. Nevertheless, that's a separate issue altogether. It proposes to establish an apex regulator for higher education, the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan or Commission, which will be like a supreme authority for higher education. See, if it was an independent authority, if it was independent of the government, then it would have been a different argument. But this commission would be entirely controlled by the central government. It would be primarily manned by the bureaucrats. It is giving an excessive role for bureaucrats in managing higher education, to regulate higher education. And that is where the concern lies. Under the commission, there will be three councils that will be set up. So the commission is like the apex body. Under the apex regulator, there are three councils which will come up: a regulatory council, a standards council, and as well as an accreditation council. So the name itself tells you what's the role and purpose of these councils. The standards council will lay down the education standards, the curriculum standards, the governance standards. The regulatory council will enforce the regulations It will enforce penalties on universities which are violating the provisions of the law. It will ensure that the prescribed standards are strictly followed and universities in India comply with it. The Accreditation Council will provide the required accreditation to higher education institutions in the country. So these three councils will function under one apex regulator, which is the Adhisthan Commission, the Shiksha Commission, under which these three councils are being established. So it will take away the existing functions of UGC. UGC will be completely replaced with this. Same with AICTE and NCTE. Now, when you look at the composition of the councils and the apex body, it will become clear as to what extent the central government will exercise control over the commission and the three councils. It is very important to study the composition of the commission and the councils as to who's the chairperson or president, who are the members, how will they be appointed, what's their terms of service. Understanding that will help you understand the degree of central government control over these regulatory bodies. That is why the bill is being opposed by the opposition, by the state governments, because the central government is giving excessive power to itself. When you look at the three councils, the Regulatory Council, Standards Council, and Accreditation Council, each council will be headed by a president and it will have up to 14 members. Is that clear? Please make a note. This can be very important for prelims. The president should be a person of eminence in the field of higher education research. They should be involved in the academic domain with considerable expertise, with at least 10 years of experience equivalent to that of a professor. Only such an individual will be appointed as the president of these three councils. So all three councils will have three separate presidents. Then each council will have up to 14 members, and the members would include eminent experts, one nominee of the higher education department within the Ministry of Education, and nominees of the other two councils. Now, do you see even any amount of representation for state governments? There's only one nominee from state governments on a rotational basis, and everyone else are primarily appointed by the central government, and essentially they are bound to be loyal in a way to the central government, because the president of India would be the appointing authority. So there will be a search and selection committee which will select and recommend the names of three presidents and all the members to these councils. This committee itself is headed by two eminent experts and the higher education secretary, who is a central government bureaucrat. Though this search and selection committee will be chaired by one of the eminent experts, eventually it's the government which is selecting the eminent experts, and the government's top secretary in the field of education is part of this search and selection committee. So they will recommend the names of the president and the members to the president of India for appointment, meaning the central government has complete control over the appointment removal process. The central government will prescribe their salaries, allowances, remuneration, etc. When you look at the commission, which is the apex body, the apex regulator, the Viksit, Bharat, Shiksha, Adhisthan, it will have a chairperson with 12 members. And the chairperson will be a person of eminence and reputation, not necessarily from the field of education. Is that clear? Whereas with councils, the president was supposed to be from the field of education. But for the commission, this is not specified. It just has to be a person of eminence and reputation. Essentially, this will be a political appointment. The ruling party at the center will get to appoint a political appointee, and the members would be the presidents of the three councils, the higher education secretary from Ministry of Education, 5 eminent experts from the outside, again selected by the central government, 2 eminent academicians from state higher education institutions. Look at the skewed nature of the composition here. Almost 90% of the commission is also dominated by the central government, including central government's bureaucrats, eminent outside experts appointed by the central government itself. And state government has zero representation, and only state higher education institutions will have 2 academicians representing them. So this skewed nature in favor of the central government against the states affects the autonomy of these institutions. It essentially is a case of constitutional overreach. The center is stepping into the domain of the state governments, though education is a concurrent subject. And though central government has only limited powers under entry 66 of union list, it is carrying out an overreach into the domain and jurisdiction of the state governments. So the tenure also has been prescribed. The chairperson and the presidents, they will be appointed for 3 years, which can be extended up to 5 years, whereas all the members, be it the members of the commission or the councils, they will be appointed for 3 years. And there is a maximum age limit of up to 70 years, which does not apply for the chairperson of the commission. So this again shows that those who are appointed to these bodies which are going to be formed, they will be bound by loyalty to the central government in some way or the other. Especially the chairperson of the commission doesn't even have an age limit and doesn't have any specific professional qualification criteria which is mentioned, which makes it very clear that the regulatory body would be headed by a political appointee. And this could lead to politicization of higher education institutions. This is not going to be an independent authority which can act independently of the central government. It will depend entirely on the center for appointments, for salaries and remuneration. They can be removed as well whenever the government wants. And it's dominated by the bureaucracy and the central government appointees, with states having very, very limited representation. So this is one of the fundamental problems, one of the structural problems in this bill. Now, these bodies, which we discussed, the commission and the three councils, they are being accorded with tremendous power and authority. All higher education institutions in the country will come under their ambit, not just public funded institutions, even private institutions. So this has triggered a lot of concern amongst academicians, experts, and within the state governments as well, especially in opposition ruled states. The commission, along with these three councils, they will have the authority to impose penalties, withhold any grants and funds, even modify the right to confer degrees of that particular university, revoke the entire affiliation as well, and even order the shutdown of a higher education institution if it is found to be in violation of the regulatory norms. But since there will be a scope for discretion, there is always a fear that this could be potentially misused. So the writer of this article has very clearly highlighted and pointed out some of the drawbacks that are there in this bill. On one side, if you look at this from central government's perspective, there are some positives which come out of it. The center believes that we need more structured and very clear governance in higher education, and providing for greater centralization could probably achieve that purpose, which could streamline higher education in the country, creating better opportunities, focusing more on research, focusing more on outcomes. Whereas the critics are also right that there are serious concerns, a case of constitutional overreach, a case of bureaucratic dominance and control over decision making. And this could be detrimental for autonomy in our higher education institutions. The way in which our IITs, IIMs are run and managed, this could get severely compromised. Then central funded universities, government funded universities, including the private universities in the higher education domain, they could become completely pliable under the authority of the commission and the three councils. So this is what raises the concern, which is highlighted by the writer. The writer believes that the states and the academia should have been given better representation, which is not the case. The academia has very minimal representation, with all the eminent experts being appointed only by the central government alone. State governments have very little say, and they just have namesake representation in the commission and the three councils. So this is the basic problem with the bill. Apart from that, the bill does not focus on social justice. It doesn't focus enough on inclusivity in higher education institutions. The bill has no provision with regard to reservation or affirmative action for SCs and STs, for other backward classes. So, the lack of focus of the bill on social justice and equity and inclusion is another cause for concern as well. So, these points, I think, is enough to build a balanced narrative to discuss the provisions and the positive aspects according to the central government as to why such centralization is being pushed for, and the criticism against it coming mainly from the states and the academia. So, please take up this mains practice question and use it for your answer writing practice. Now, let's move towards the next article, a very interesting topic related to India's submarine based nuclear deterrence, which has been strengthened with the induction of INS Aridhamman. INS Aridhamman is the third SSBN category nuclear powered submarine to be inducted into the Indian Navy. Over the last few days, there has been a lot of buzz about what Defense Minister Rajnath Singh had posted. And it has been confirmed through multiple sources that INS Aridhamman has been inducted into service, commissioned into the Indian Navy. And this is a very, very important development. Because, see, INS Aridhamman is not an ordinary submarine. It is part of the Arihant class of submarines. The Arihant class was launched in 2009 by then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh under the then UPA government. Under this indigenous submarine project, in 2016, the first submarine, INS Arihant, in fact, the class is named after the first vessel under the particular category. That's why the Arihant class. And the first submarine, INS Arihant, was commissioned under the Modi government in 2016, which became India's first ever SSBN, Ship Submersible Ballistic Nuclear. I'll repeat, what is SSBN? It is short for Ship Submersible Ballistic Nuclear. It is essentially a nuclear powered submarine carrying nuclear weapons on board. Now, this is a significant milestone for any country because this achieves the status of a nuclear triad. And only 5 countries other than India have the capability. It's only the P5 countries which have this capability. And now India also does since 2016, since INS Arihant was inducted. So only US, Russia, China, UK, and France have this capability, known as the nuclear triad. In 2024, India inducted the second submarine under the Arihant class, INS Arigat, which added more strength to our nuclear deterrence. And now we have the third and the larger submarine compared to the previous two. Compared to Arihant and Arigat, Aridhamman is much larger in size, much more capable, carries many more missiles on board, and this strengthens India's nuclear triad status. So, what do you mean by nuclear triad? How does it strengthen your nuclear deterrence? Nuclear triad is the ability of a nation to deliver nuclear weapons from 3 different mediums: from land, from air, and from underwater. Now, see, India has land based delivery systems such as ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, or Agni series of missiles, Prithvi and BrahMos, for example, the land based variants, which are usually stored in underground silos, or they are kept mobile by mounting them on trucks or railway launchers. And they keep moving around as well to avoid any detection by the enemy. So these are your land-based nuclear delivery systems that we have. Then we have air-based delivery systems, mainly made up of our fighter jets, such as the Sukhoi 30 MKI, the Rafale and the Jaguar. They are capable of being fitted with nuclear-armed missiles, which can deliver nuclear weapons from the air. It is said even the Mirage 2000 can also be used for the purpose. So This fleet of fighter jets that we have, some of which has been dedicated for delivering nuclear weapons, they are all placed under the command and control of the SFC, the Strategic Forces Command, which maintains ownership of India's nuclear arsenal and India's nuclear delivery systems. It's a tri-service command drawn from Indian Army, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force. It reports directly to the Nuclear Command Authority, headed by the Prime Minister of India, which can authorize a nuclear strike. Once the SFC receives orders for a nuclear strike from the Nuclear Command Authority, that is directly from the Prime Minister, it essentially is responsible for executing the orders. So it maintains the nuclear warheads of India and the delivery systems, be it the Agni series of missiles or some of these fighter jets, which are under the command of the SFC. Then you have the underwater delivery systems, primarily nuclear powered submarines. An ordinary submarine cannot give you this capability. A conventional submarine, like a diesel powered submarine, diesel electric propelled submarine, they have a big limitation. Your conventional submarines, they have a big limitation, be it diesel powered or be it diesel electric. They have to frequently come to the surface in order to breathe fresh air and to recharge their batteries. They can't stay submerged for prolonged periods of time. They have to come to the surface once in a while to take in fresh air and oxygen and to recharge the batteries, which makes them vulnerable for detection by the enemy. See, this is very critical in a nuclear scenario. When you do your war gaming exercises, imagining a nuclear involvement, since countries like India have a no first use policy in place, which is our nuclear doctrine, since India will not be the first country to launch a nuclear strike, there is a possibility that we might be subjected to a nuclear attack by an adversary. So, to prevent such a first strike from happening, you need to build your second strike capability. You need to establish credible minimum deterrence, meaning the adversary should know that after a first strike, there is a guaranteed second strike coming from India, which could completely annihilate and destroy that nation. Because, see, any adversary which will ever attack India with the nuclear weapons in a hypothetical scenario would not take aim at one location or just two locations. In a first strike, they will try to take out the entire nuclear arsenal and delivery systems of India so that India can't retaliate, so that there won't be a second strike from India. That is why you need survivable nuclear delivery systems. You need such weapon platforms which can survive the first nuclear strike. Now, when you look at a nuclear scenario, your land-based delivery systems are quite easy to detect. Your ballistic and cruise missiles, which are based out of army commands, air force command centers, or hidden in underground silos, or even the ones kept mobile on trucks and railway lines, they can all be detected with today's surveillance and intelligence gathering abilities. Using satellites, drones, and human intelligence, they can pick out the location of most of the land-based launchers and delivery systems, and they can take it out entirely in the first strike. The enemy can wipe out your land-based nuclear arsenal and nuclear delivery systems, which is primarily your missile systems. Similarly, your air-based delivery options can also be wiped out because they can be easily detected. These fighter jets, they can be taken out in the first strike itself, which makes it vulnerable. So the only thing which can guarantee a second strike from India would be survivable nuclear arsenal, which can be placed underwater on a nuclear powered submarine. Because, see, conventional submarines, since they have to come to the surface frequently, they are risking exposure. The enemy can detect their location, right, through better sonar and anti-submarine warfare. They can pick out location of conventional submarines and take it out in the first strike. But the only thing which can probably survive a first strike is a nuclear powered submarine carrying nuclear weapons on board. Because a nuclear propelled submarine has almost infinite power, right? Virtually, it can remain underwater for months and years together The only limitation on a nuclear powered submarine would be food and supplies for the crew and the fatigue of the crew. Apart from this, a nuclear powered submarine has absolutely no limitation. You can dispatch it far away from your coastline, keep it hidden in some other part of the world by making use of the underwater terrain, by making use of underwater trenches, mountainous structures, and caverns, where these submarines can hide using their stealth features. They have very low sonar and heat and acoustic signatures compared to your conventional submarines. They can remain hidden for prolonged periods of time. They don't need to come to the surface regularly to take in air and to recharge their batteries, which happens in the case of conventional submarines. It is this endurance of nuclear powered submarines which makes it almost undetectable, and thus it can survive a first nuclear strike. Even if your leadership is wiped out, even if your land and air systems are wiped out, your nuclear powered subs, SSBNs, can deliver a second strike. And this completes the nuclear triad. Only 5 countries have this capability, and now India has joined the rank, becoming the 6th nation in the world. Now, when you look at nuclear powered submarines, there are 3 types, and I want you to understand the difference. This is very important for your exams. See, these nuclear powered submarines, they are basically propelled by a nuclear reactor, a miniature nuclear reactor. Instead of being propelled by, let's say, diesel or diesel electric engine, it's propelled by a miniaturized nuclear reactor. And there are 3 types of such nuclear powered submarines. We have SSN, SSGN, and SSBN. There can be a prelims question based on this. All 3 are nuclear powered submarines. They all have a nuclear reactor powering them. But the difference between them is based on the type of weapons they are carrying. The type of weapons they have on board is what differentiates them. SSNs are usually considered as attack submarines, and they only carry conventional weapons. They don't carry nuclear weapons. Is that clear? They only carry conventional weapons like torpedoes, ballistic and cruise missiles without a nuclear warhead. They will have conventional warheads. And these attack submarines are used in frontline combat. Then you have SSGN, powered by nuclear energy, but it has guided weapons on board. It has precise guided weapons on board, meaning it doesn't have nuclear weapons. It has regular ballistic cruise missiles, which have very precise guidance systems on them. Then comes your SSBN, nuclear powered submarines, but carrying ballistic missiles which have a nuclear warhead. They are tipped with a nuclear warhead. Is that clear? And SSBN is what completes your nuclear triad. Not any ordinary nuclear powered submarine, right? Conventional submarines definitely don't give you nuclear triad status. Even in nuclear powered category, SSN and SSGN will not complete your nuclear triad status. It's only and only SSBN which completes your nuclear triad status, because they are the only ones which can carry nuclear weapons on board. Now, when you compare Aridhamman, which is the 3rd variant of the Arihant class, with INS Arihant and INS Arigat, it is much larger in size. This again shows the growing capabilities, the indigenous defense manufacturing capabilities of India. If you look at the tonnage of Arihant and Arigat, they were in the 6,000 ton category, propelled by a 83 megawatt nuclear reactor. Whereas Aridhamman is much larger in size with a displacement weightage of 7,000 tons. And the best part is about the weapons it carries on board. See, for SSBNs, India has developed 2 specialized ballistic missiles. One is the K-15 Sagarika, which has a range of 750 kilometers. Then we have the longer range K4 and also the under development K5, which has a range of upwards of 3,500 kilometers. So this is sufficient for India to deal with its immediate adversaries, that is Pakistan and China, right? Now, Arihant and Arigat, they had only 4 missile tubes. In these 4 missile tubes, you could fit around 12 K-15 Sagarika missiles and around 4 K-4 could be carried by it. This was known to be its basic capacity. Whereas Aridhamman has double the weapon capability. It has 8 missile tubes. It can carry 2 dozen K-15s. It can even carry 8 K-4s. So the weapon capability is double compared to Arihant and Arigat. The missile tubes are more, hence it can carry more K-15 Sagarikas and K-4s, almost double compared to the previous two versions of the submarine. Now this brings us into question, where does India stand with regard to submarine fleets of other major military powers? See, India right now has a sanctioned strength of 18 submarines. The Navy is authorized to have up to 18 submarines. But right now, only 16 are operational in service. One of them suffered a catastrophic accident a few years ago. In 2013, the Sindhu Ghosh class, the Kilo class submarine that we had got from Russia, conventional submarine, it suffered a catastrophic failure because of a fire accident at the Mumbai dockyard. Many naval sailors got killed as well, a very tragic accident for India. So we lost one submarine entirely. Now, around 16 of them are operational. Aside from the SSBNs, we have 3 SSBNs now. You have 6 Cavalry class submarines, which is the Scorpion category of submarines that we got from France under Project 75. France transferred the technology and it was built indigenously in India. And the 6 Cavalry class attack submarines, these are conventional diesel electric submarines, they've been inducted into the Indian Navy. We also have 4 old Shishikumar class subs, which will be decommissioned in another few years, and 7 Kilo class Sindhu Ghosh submarines from Russia. So compared to other major powers, we are many, many steps behind. US has the largest fleet according to most experts, followed by China. And let's look at the top nations. US is believed to have a massive submarine fleet of 70, with many of them being SSBNs. Some reports say that China has overtaken the US, but some experts deny that. So China is believed to have anywhere between 61 to 65 submarines in its fleet, with a number of SSBNs and nuclear powered submarines. Russia is also in the same range, around 63. Then comes Iran, Japan, followed by South Korea, and then you have India with a sanctioned strength of 18, but only 16 are operational. So this shows that we have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to China, as China is very super active in the Indo-Pacific, especially in India's backyard, where Chinese submarines and spy research vessels are frequently deployed. It's of great importance for us to step up our submarine fleet. Now, can you guess how many submarines Pakistan has? Can you let me know in the comments? So what is India doing to bridge the gap with China? We have some very ambitious futuristic plans to try and maintain our submarine strength. One, India is starting a new SSN program. It's a brand new submarine program, a nuclear powered attack submarine program. By 2036, 2038, we plan to have at least 2 SSNs inducted and many more will be built indigenously. It's an indigenous program. We are also looking to acquire one attack submarine from Russia on lease, mainly for training purposes. Right? In the past as well, Russia has leased nuclear powered submarines to India, such as INS Chakra, which was mainly used for training purposes to operate nuclear powered submarines. Then we are entering into a new deal with Germany. India, Germany have recently finalized a deal under Project 75I, under which Germany will help India build 6 advanced air independent propulsion conventional submarines. See, I told you, right? Diesel electric submarines, they have a limitation, which is they have to frequently surface. So when they are equipped with AIP, AIP is a technology, air independent propulsion, it will reduce the requirement for taking in fresh air and oxygen. Instead of surfacing every few weeks, it can survive underwater for at least a month or two and then it can surface. So air independent propulsion, which it basically adds to the stealth features of a submarine and limits the need for the submarine to come to the surface. So with Germany, we are looking to procure 6 of them under Project 75I. And we are also in talks with France for 3 additional Scorpion class submarines. So this is India's future plans. Now, let's look at the next article. India has raised a very, very serious concern about the targeting of civilians, the targeting of infrastructure, especially energy infrastructure, and the curbing of freedom of navigation in the ongoing Iran war. Now, this is a strong message from India to Iran, to Israel, and as well as to United States. It again shows the balanced position of India as well. Remember, yesterday and day before we discussed how large-scale civilian killings have been carried out by Israel, which even accounts for war crimes in Lebanon. In the capital, Beirut, commercial centers, crowded areas during daytime has been bombed as Israel claims that Hezbollah leaders were hiding over here. But in the name of killing Hezbollah leaders, you can't go and kill hundreds of innocent civilians. What happened in Beirut, in Lebanon, is disastrous. It's a human tragedy that Israel has carried out. 350 plus people have been killed. 1,200 to 1,300 people have been very seriously injured. So you can't claim that you killed 2 or 3 Hezbollah fighters and in the process you have killed 300 plus people. Many of them innocent people, including women and children. This is a classic case of a war crime, a crime against humanity. When you know that civilians are present and you're still deliberately targeting those locations, it accounts for a war crime and Israel can be tried for this. So this goes out as a message from India. Similarly, we are sending out a message to Iran, which has been blatantly targeting energy infrastructure and crippling freedom of navigation through Hormuz. It's a message to US and Israel as well, which are also attacking Iran's energy infrastructure. So these attacks, they don't align with principles of international law. That is what India has pointed out. But India has been careful not to name any country. We have not taken Israel's name with regard to the attacks in Lebanon. We have not taken Iran's name with regard to Hormuz or attacks on energy facilities in the Gulf. Without naming any of these countries, India has expressed this balanced position, which highlights our strong opposition to what's happening in this war. As we discussed yesterday, Israel could be the biggest roadblock for the peace process as it continues to use blatant force and disproportionate force, and it is extending the war unnecessarily in Lebanon as well. Iran has demanded that war should stop on all the fronts, whereas Israel and US deny having agreed to any such commitments. Irrespective of what they agreed to, targeting civilian locations and cities and killing hundreds of civilians cannot be justified on any circumstances. Under any circumstances, you can't justify the blatant killing of hundreds of civilians. That is why the global community is extremely alarmed, and most countries have strongly condemned the Israeli attacks. So India has been a little more careful. I mean, if you look at countries like Spain, they've taken a very ideological position, firmly opposing the illegal war of Israel and US. But India has critical interests with these powers. We can't afford to get emotional. So India has taken a more balanced position while we condemn civilian killings, targeting of infrastructure, etc., and violation of international law, but we are not naming any of the countries. Right? So that shows the balanced position that we often take. Now, coming to what's happening in Lebanon. Why does Israel carry out such attacks in Lebanon? See, Israel's argument is that southern Lebanon has become a base for Hezbollah, which is an extremist organization backed by Iran. It's an Iranian proxy since 1982, since it was established. And it has been known to target northern Israel by using its control over southern parts of Lebanon, closer to the Israeli border. But however, to understand this, you need to go back in time and look at the complex history of this region. Hezbollah's creation is not entirely a result of Iran's covert war. Israel is equally responsible for the creation of Hezbollah. Why? Because in 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. It carried out a major attack to target the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was fighting for the liberation of Palestinian territories, which Israel has illegally occupied. See, this goes back to 1947-48. It goes back to the very heart of the Israel-Palestine issue, where Israel violated the two-state solution, never allowed Palestine to be formed as a separate state, and went on to illegally occupy Palestinian territories. So, to resist the Israeli occupation and to fight for independence, many Palestinian extremists had taken up violence, and PLO was one of the leading forces which was targeting Israel, which was mainly based out of Lebanon. It would receive support from many Arab nations, from several countries across Middle East and North Africa. So, to target PLO in Lebanon, Israel invaded the country, triggering a war, and it occupied much of southern Lebanon that you see here today. Until 2000, Israel did not vacate its occupation of southern Lebanon. It was in this context that the Shia population of Lebanon, they rebelled against the Israeli atrocities, and with Iran's backing, since they sympathized with PLO and the Palestinians, the Hezbollah was formed as a radical political extremist organization. And today, Hezbollah has become extremely dominant, more dominant than Lebanese government. Hezbollah has a presence in Lebanese parliament. They control the economy as well. It's like a parallel government structure which operates. So until 2000, Israel went on to occupy southern parts of Lebanon to prevent Hezbollah from using this territory. And in 2000, finally, they retreated following a ceasefire which was worked out through the United Nations. This UN mediated ceasefire led to the drawing of this UN blue line that you can see, which is the international border. And a UN peacekeeping force was deployed, the UNIFIL, to monitor the peace between both sides. As per the ceasefire, Israel was supposed to retreat. The IDF was ordered to retreat from southern Lebanon, go back to Israel beyond the borders, and Hezbollah was ordered to stay to the north of the Litani River. You can see the Litani River here. So this is roughly a 30-kilometer exclusion zone where only Lebanese government and military is supposed to have control, along with UNIFIL forces near the blue line. Neither IDF should be present nor Hezbollah should be present. But both sides have repeatedly violated this. As Iran used Hezbollah as a major proxy to carry out large-scale attacks against Israel, Hezbollah went on to frequently fire rockets, missiles aimed at northern Israel, which even led to the second war in 2006, where Israel again invaded Lebanon, occupied parts of southern Lebanon, triggering a major conflict. That's when India had to evacuate 5,000, 6,000 nationals who were stuck in Lebanon through Operation Sukoon, where Indian Navy evacuated Indian nationals and foreign nationals from the conflict zone. So this is a long-lasting conflict where both sides are to be blamed, and it all goes back to the Israel-Palestine issue, which has never been resolved. So today it is quite rich for Israel to say that Hezbollah is an existential threat, because it all goes back to Israel's repeated invasion, the refusal to resolve the Palestinian issue, recognize Palestinian statehood. And at the same time, you can't excuse what Hezbollah has done. It is an extremist outfit resorting to brutal violence, has been a proxy, a willing proxy of the Iranian theocratic regime. And that's the complex nature of this conflict. So now Israel views this as an opportunity, because in the last couple of years, Israel has decimated Hezbollah's leadership. Hassan Nasrallah, its supreme leader, was wiped out a couple of years ago. Most of the mid-level commanders have been targeted and wiped out. And the biggest supporter of Hezbollah was the government in Syria under Bashar al-Assad, who was a close ally of Iran. Now Assad is gone since 2024 December, right? There is a new regime, which is essentially under a terror group, formerly known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, under a new president, Mohammed al-Shara, who's aligned with US and the Gulf powers and Israel as well. So the support from Syria has been cut off. Syria was like a bridge linking Iran through Iraq and Syria into Lebanon. And this was the route, the land route through which IRGC would provide arms, funds, and training to Hezbollah fighters. That land connection has been broken. That physical link has been broken with the fall of Assad's regime in Syria. So Hezbollah is at its weakest. So probably Israel views this as a once in a lifetime opportunity to decimate Hezbollah. While this might seem like a legitimate security objective for a state, you can't go and wipe out civilians, bomb civilian locations, kill hundreds of civilians, including children, in the name of targeting an extremist group. This is not tolerated under international law, and it constitutes to be labeled as a war crime. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look. On page number 4, there's an article referring to a proposed international airport at Puri in coastal Odisha. As you know, Puri is a historic and a very sacred location, the site of the Jagannath temple. And to facilitate better tourism and pilgrimage, the Odisha government is working on the proposal for an international airport, which is being backed by the central government as well. So, when the required clearances were being pushed for this project, the Environment Ministry recommended that the advice of Wildlife Institute of India should be obtained in order to assess the damage the project might cause to Chilika Lake and the biodiversity of the Chilika Lake. Because the proposed site of the airport is right in the path of the Chilika Lake, which all of you must know is a very critical ecosystem, a critical wetland. The Wildlife Institute of India has strongly recommended that the government should not go ahead with this Greenfield Airport project because the flights would be in the path of migratory birds, which could pose a serious threat, not just for the migratory birds and for the biodiversity of the Chilka Lake, but even for the safety of the flight operations. And also, don't forget, Chilka Lake is also home to olive ridley turtles. It's in the same region in the Gahirmata Rushikulya belt where the mass hatching phenomena happens of olive ridley turtles. You also find the Irrawaddy river dolphins, which are all species that have very high levels of protection, considered as threatened species. And don't forget, Chilika Lake is a Ramsar site. It's a critical wetland of international importance. It's a wetland of international importance. It's an important bird area, particularly for migratory birds, which come from thousands of kilometers, according to BirdLife International, which is a global NGO focused on conserving the bird population and especially migratory bird population. So it's a Ramsar site, right? A critical wetland for India. You can see the location here on the map. And the Puri airport will be right next to it. And the flights could threaten migratory birds and the biodiversity as well. And also note that Chilika is the largest brackish water lagoon in the world and the second largest coastal lagoon in the world. These are some key factual details you should know. And it's also on the tentative list to be recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its rich natural heritage. Next, Karnataka High Court has observed that the police cannot collect blood sample from an accused without a proper legal arrest. This is a violation of procedure, of criminal procedure. Let's say in a particular case, the police have a suspect, right? And they will have to subject the suspect for further scientific forensic analysis, which could include DNA sample collection, blood and urine sample collection, or in cases of rape, sexual molestation, it could include semen sample collection as well. Collection of any such biological samples cannot be done unless and until there is a legal arrest carried out of the suspect. In Karnataka, there was a case which came up where the police had basically taken a suspect into custody, but they did not fulfill the legal process of arresting the suspect. They did not have the valid grounds. They did not give the reasons in writing. They didn't have a proper warrant. And yet they detained the suspect and collected a blood and urine sample. And Karnataka High Court has struck this down. Any such evidence collected will be deemed to be illegal if the arrest itself was illegal. So that's why following criminal procedure as outlined in Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita is very, very critical. Police might have the right suspect. He might even be the culprit. But if you do not follow the due process, you have to give the reasons for the arrest, provide all the opportunities for the suspect, ensure that the basic rights are protected. It's also about right to privacy because sharing one's personal information can be done only when there is a legal arrest carried out. Because your blood samples, your bodily samples, it's part of your right to privacy, right? But it can be shared only if the arrest itself is legal. And in a court, it will have evidentiary value. It can be considered as valid evidence only if the sample was collected in a legal manner and if the arrest was done in a legal manner. So this is a reminder to police forces that criminal procedure cannot be bypassed. You can't take shortcuts. You need to follow the basic steps. And it shows how our criminal justice system and the constitution offers protection to the suspects as well, to the accused as well. Coming to the last article, on page 10, there's an article referring to the Indian Ocean Conference, which is being hosted by Mauritius at Port Louis. India's Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar has taken part in it. Many important powers from Indian Ocean region are participating in the Indian Ocean Conference. This is the 9th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference, hosted by Mauritius this time. It has brought together foreign ministers of Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Seychelles, even from Gulf countries like Oman, Saudi Arabia, UAE, which are involved in the ongoing conflict, and many other countries, even Australia. There are a few African countries invited as well. There are up to 30 countries minimum which participate in the Indian Ocean Conference, which has become a key conference for the IOR region. So, who organizes this conference? What is the background? See, this conference was launched in 2016 in Singapore by a think tank known as India Foundation. It is organized in coordination with several think tanks from across the IOR region. And the government of India is one of the supporters of this conference. We back this track to diplomacy that is carried out, right? It was a track 2 event. Now it has become a track 1 event with official diplomatic participation. So countries like Australia, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Mauritius, Maldives, they are very keen participants in this conference. So it is always backed and supported by India in line with the vision of Sagar Mahasagar doctrine. It aligns with the vision of Sagar Mahasagar doctrine of India to provide security and growth, mutual, holistic advancement of all countries and security and growth for all countries in the region. It enhances India's leadership position. So it's organized by this think tank called India Foundation in association with many other think tanks from across Indian Ocean region. So many governments which are littorals of Indian Ocean participate at the foreign ministers level, and they discuss the pressing issues of Indian Ocean. Could be security issues, environmental issues, etc. So please be aware of the Indian Ocean Conference. The participating nations, anywhere between 30 to 40 countries are invited, and many of them are eager participants. And India is one of the lead countries along with Australia. So on this note, I bring my analysis to an end. We have covered all the key topics with great detail. If you like the session, if you benefited from the class, do let me know through your likes and comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.